If there's something strong that I believe in or that I want to do, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to be held back by my concern. When I make a decision, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what is the point? I'm not complaining about what happened. It happened both to me and for me, is the way I look at it. I wouldn't have asked for that time in prison, voluntarily, but I really am in some ways truly grateful for the reset that it gave me. There's still a part of me that I will probably always be working on that wakes up some days and thinks, I'm a pretender, I'm not good enough, everybody who's ever said anything bad about me, like they're right. I don't think shoving that down or pretending like it doesn't exist is helpful. My way of fixing it is to be of service. The more often I say yes to things that I can say yes to that helps someone else is another step towards, I guess, overall fulfillment for me.
My guest today is Charlie Engle, one of the most accomplished ultra-distance runners on the planet. In 2007, Charlie completed a 4,500-mile run across the Sahara Desert, a feat so incredible, Matt Damon simply had to make a movie documenting it. And perhaps equally as incredible, they raised more than $6 million for clean water projects in Africa. Charlie spent years battling addiction, hitting rock bottom in ways that would have permanently derailed most people. He got sober, conquered some of the most incredible running challenges in the world, and then found himself in federal prison for charges you have to hear to believe. Today, Charlie is preparing for a major adventure, running from the bottom of the Dead Sea to the top of Mount Everest. This is about resilience, redemption, and embracing the pain for personal growth. As Charlie says, ask me why afterwards. Let's dive in with Charlie. Charlie Engle, welcome to True Alternatives.
Thank you, Mark.
So I want to start with the beginning of your book, Running Man. There are some people that, quote unquote, run to the fire. It sounds like your mother was that type of person. You tell a story about moving to Attica in New York. I'd love for you to tell that story because I think it tells a lot about who your mother was, but also I think a little bit about who you were.
Such a beautiful way to start. And what triggers right away when I think about that and that story is that was around the time, because I was 11, 12 years old. And my mom, we live in North Carolina, and my mom's like, hey, we're going to move to Attica, New York. I knew Attica because it was only a couple of years after the prison riots. And so it was, even as a kid, it was all over the news. What I like to say about my mother is my mother taught me how to think, but not what to think. So she was a very critical thinker. And any question I would ever ask her, to give me her opinion, as we do as kids. We want our parents' opinion, like, who are you going to vote for president? That was in the book too. And she would say, well, Charlie, some people believe this and some people believe that, and you're just going to have to figure it out for yourself. So this phase of my life was formative. She packs us up in our Volkswagen Squareback and drives to Attica, New York. And what she was actually doing was writing plays, but her one of her gifts was she came up with a deal with the state of New York in Attica, Elmira, and Sing Sing prisons, all three. That play, or there's a movie about Sing Sing that came out recently, and her story actually very much mirrors that. She brought art, and arts into these prisons, and those prisons are pretty much max, you're talking people who've done violent crimes. And she would actually meet everyone. People would sign up for one of her classes or plays. She'd meet the 20 men. And then she would write the play around the people that she met.
That's amazing.
And instead of what we normally see as the opposite, where people audition, you are you. So
Winnie the Pooh wouldn't really be a hit in prison.
No, well, it might be, but you're going to play yourself because that's the role, that you're playing.
Yeah.
But she was very much influential for me in just the way she lived her life. She unapologetically, she's one of those people. She loved who she loved. She did the project she wanted to do, and there was nothing in her life that didn't involve human rights of some kind, whether they were gay rights or civil rights. I mean, in her view, civil rights is everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because civil rights, we tend to think of that as a racial thing. It's not. Civil rights are the kind of rights that we are all entitled to.
Mm-hmm.
And so from a very early age, man, I'm holding signs on Franklin Street as a 5-year-old in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, you know, on campus, marching against or for something.
Yeah.
And, you know, it made me brave. It made me understand that not that I didn't care about other people's opinions, and I very much wanted to respect other people's opinions. But like, if there's something strong that I believe in or that I want to do, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And not be...
You put the active in activism.
Yeah, I'm not going to be held back by my concern. And there's been a couple of times where I've taken a hard stand on something only to find out I was actually wrong. I mean, that happens. And if you're an activist and you're never wrong, then you're taking either too safe a path or you're deceiving yourself.
Yeah. There was a story as well from Attica in your childhood where you were running and onto a train, and it's like this first adventure in running. I'd love for you to just, you know, quickly tell the story, but just like, how did it feel? Like, did it have you ever thought about that moment and be like, maybe that's when it kind of initially clicked of this adventurous running?
Yeah. What a great question. Well, my mom would go work in prisons, and, you know, and this is upstate New York. It snows. Like there's, you know, so occasionally she would get stuck. We didn't have cell phones. I mean, we had a phone in the house, so she would call and let me know, hey, I'm not gonna make it. And inevitably, a 12-year-old boy in a small little town like Attica is gonna wander around, and, you know, I was a free-range child. And the joke I always say when somebody uses the term, I fell into the wrong crowd, I'm always like, what if you're the wrong crowd? Like, what if everybody else fell into you?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether it was me or them, but like there was a thing. And these guys would like jump onto trains, and this train ran behind my house. So I never did it, but I watched them do it. And they would jump on, they'd ride a little ways down, and they'd jump off and whatever. So I decide one day on a Saturday, my mom's stuck at prison, and which is a funny sentence. And I just decided I'm going to go, you know, the train's right behind my house, our apartment. And I ran, tripped a couple of times, and I finally got up the nerve, and I jumped on a train, and there I am. I'm on the train. Yeah. And I'm in this boxcar by myself that smells like piss. And like, I mean, it's just this terrible thing. And I'm there, and I'm like, how am I going to get off of this thing? Like, because it's going... I don't know if it slowed down for the part that I got on, but I now was afraid to like get off, and I end up, you know, miles and miles away, you know, from my house. And I finally, you know, do get up the nerve. I feel the train slow a little, and I jump off, and I realize there's only one track. So first of all, I haven't seen another train going the other way. I realized I got to run back. And so I started to run, and it ended up being, you know, several hours of nonstop running. Yeah. You know, all the way back. But I loved every aspect of that adventure. Like, it was this really crazy, weird adventure. And, you know, I was sweaty, and like in the book, as you saw, I got back to my apartment like within minutes before my mother actually did make it back. I didn't know when she was coming back. It was just luck. And she came back, and she's like, so what have you been doing? And I literally, as a kid would, I sat there and I said, nothing. You know, and it's not because I thought I would be in trouble. I was never in trouble with my mother, ever. Not one time ever. I mean, even as an adult, through all my struggles with addiction and other things, like there was never a time when I was in trouble. So I wasn't afraid. I just felt like this was my thing. It was my first experience with like a long distance run, and I was still trying to even sort out how I felt about it.
Amazing. You mentioned addiction, and I don't want to fast forward too much. Yeah. But I'd love for you to maybe talk about when you realized you had a problem.
Yeah. I mean, even in those early days at 12 and 13 when I was in New York, you know, there were a couple of times where like a bottle got passed around, and I realize now, or, you know, have known it for quite some time, that burn that comes from like, you know, even a good bourbon or something, who knows what I was drinking, but it burned like crazy. But I got that super warm feeling, and it's almost like I felt all that pressure melt away. Because my mother, it took me a long time to come to understand through therapy and other things that I was lovingly neglected. I was a defender of my mother and her mothering because people were very critical of how she was raising me. People in our own family, like he shouldn't be doing this and you can't do that. And so, my goal was to like shine and make it where, what are you talking about? Like, look at me, look how great I am. Or I don't know if I thought that when I was a kid, certainly didn't feel it. But alcohol, even at that early stage, it's kind of like when I drank that, I knew in the future, I don't think I knew it was going to be that big a problem, but I knew I had a friend.
Yeah.
I knew that was going to be there for me at some point in the future if and when I needed it.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You spoke earlier for Stone Ridge. And the way you talked about addiction, it's not as if you looked at it as I hate it. You almost like have embraced your addiction. I mean, I don't know if you can talk about that, but it's kind of what it's done for you.
It's done everything for me in a strange way. I mean, it's also, to start at the end here for a second, I've reframed in the last few years my relationship with alcohol and drugs. My understanding of myself even years ago was that like, this is a disease. I was preordained because of family history with both parents and grandparents who drank. Like this is just like my legacy in a sense. So, and genetics do play a role.
Did you know that? I mean,
I didn't really know it. So it was only later that I was able to see it. I mean, I knew that both my parents, they divorced when I was 2, but I knew that both of them drank a lot, and so I understand that. But, it was... Man, I don't know how I think my understanding, though, with my own obsession and addictive behaviors was pretty much that when I set my sights on something, I was going to do it. Whether it's good for me or bad for me, once I made up my mind I was going to do it, I was going to do it. Yeah. And so I understood later, which as I spoke about, a little while ago, the power in that. The power in that. I'm not wishy-washy. It doesn't mean I make good decisions all the time, even today as a sober person. But, when I make a decision, I'm all in. Yeah. Because otherwise, what is the point? And I looked at drinking that way. Yeah. I never was interested in like having a beer. I'm like, how many beers do you have?
Moderation is not a thing.
Right. So I would actually say, how many beers do you have? Or like how, if it was cocaine or something, like, let's take stock of what we have to work with here, because I'm not interested in like doing a little bit and then like, that's it. Like I wouldn't even start if that wasn't there. And I mean, that's obviously, I'm making a little bit of light of it, but that's how I felt. And I think it's served me really well in a lot of ways. Yeah.
The difference between kind of this obsessive behavior, like how do you distinguish between the addiction and kind of your running and your passion and your obsession with accomplishing, just incredible feats in the running sphere?
It's a great question because it's definitely not as simple as it might be. The easy answer would be consequences, right? So if I'm running 120 miles a week and I'm doing all that and I continue to get injured and like it's easy to point and say, oh, well, this obsession is really hurting your body. Yeah. Like, the thing is, it's not that simple. When I was running super high miles, especially, and like I was still feeding or trying to knock down the pain that I was in. I didn't recognize until very late that my behavior was so related to my pain. And my pain it's weird because pain is a funny thing with addicts in particular, because we compare ourselves to each other, right? There's the person who was beaten as a child and had like all of these terrible things happen. And like we can say, oh, well, yeah, obviously, I mean, that person ends up, struggling with all these other things. Well, I wasn't beaten. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, again, I was an only child. I grew up in this, super adult way.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, like lovingly, the neglected was kind of the framework. And that counts. But it almost felt like ashamed of the fact that like I didn't have it worse.
Yeah.
And so I think the lesson there is just that everybody's path is just different. And I figured out that this, if I could talk about it the way that I talk about it now and be vulnerable, open, and honest about these things, I think it opens up a conversation with other people where I'm not complaining about what happened, because there's no point in complaining about it. It's not something, that it happened both to me and for me is the way I look at it.
Yeah. I want to kind of dive into the running side of it. You've done some amazing runs, but I was curious if there's one you're most proud of.
Yeah, I would say, again, I try to stick with what pops right into my head without even overthinking it, and that is actually Badwater,
Mm-hmm.
which is, a race, as you're aware, in Death Valley that takes place every year.
Mm-hmm.
But weirdly, my answer is not only going to be Badwater, but the Badwater I ran in prison.
Yep,
Yeah.
I love that.
And so, Badwater is this. It's 135 miles. It's in Death Valley. And of course, it's in the second week in July, which is the hottest week traditionally, of the summer in the hottest place on the planet, period. And the race has shifted a little in recent years, but in the years where I did it consecutively, it always started in the morning. So at 10 a.m. in the floor of Death Valley, surface temperature 200 degrees. And what that race taught me more than anything is I always outperformed my talent. And because I'm not like, I broke 3 hours in a marathon, a bunch of times, but I never broke 250.
Yeah.
So you couldn't call me an elite.
Born.
No, I wasn't an elite runner. I was bigger than most of the people I raced against. I mean, for my whole running career, generally people were about 30 to 40 pounds lighter than me that were beating me or that I was, racing against. And, Badwater was just this unique thing where it was my first real test where I convinced myself, not only did I love heat, but I was so good at running in heat that I would have a chance to beat, just about everyone else.
Yeah.
I have no idea if that was actually true, but I believed it. Yeah. And that was an important shift for me because my first battle was about 20 years ago. And, I just shifted to this mentality that I wanted to do the hardest races there were because I believed that I would be better at them than other people.
But if it's not the physical talent, and not to lead your answer, but I mean, there must be something in your ability to deal with pain or like, what is it mentally that makes you kind of
I'm going to give you a
outperform?
Convoluted answer, which,
Please.
maybe all of these are, but
No.
But here's the thing.
Like.
And again, this is another one of those things that I think most people aren't willing to admit, but I am, which is even at 33 years sober today, there is still a part of me that doesn't believe that I deserve to be happy or that I deserve to not be in pain is maybe a better way to put it. Running is an interesting, you're a runner. You understand from a physical and even emotional place, you can get yourself into the pain cave or on the pain train, as someone said earlier. Like you can jump on that almost any time.
Yeah.
I can't really do that with cycling. I can't really do it. There's not a lot of other things, but running can get me there fast.
Yeah.
And so I believe there's still a part of me that I will probably always be working on that wakes up some days and thinks, I'm a pretender. I'm not good enough. Everybody who's ever said anything bad about me, like they're right. Early in my running career, when I first got sober, I was running to prove to everybody else, as much to myself, how amazing I was.
Yeah.
Because I wanted them to see me and say, well, Charlie was right. Like he's actually getting better and all of that. And so, like I said, convoluted, but today, all these years later, I still have that part of me that doesn't feel like I've done enough, doesn't feel like I am enough. And I don't think shoving that down or pretending like it doesn't exist is helpful. But I'm also not obsessed with fixing it. My way of fixing it is to be of service.
Yeah.
Being able to take that energy most of the time, though, and shift it to the positive, which is what I do. And I don't mean that in some goody two-shoes way, but I do understand, as I said in my talk, to keep it, you have to give it away.
Yeah.
The more often I just say yes to things without emptying my own cup all the time, the more often I say yes to things that I can say yes to that help someone else is another step towards, I guess, overall fulfillment.
I love that.
For me.
Yeah. What's amazing is that your answer wasn't the Sahara Desert. I'd love for you to talk about, what that, I don't even know if we can call it a race. I guess the challenge of the adventure was like. And again, I guess I would love both the physical component, but also the mental and emotional of getting through that.
So when I first decided that I was going to run across the Sahara Desert, like almost 8,000 kilometers, 5,000 miles, I took possession of the idea, the kind of the way that you might take possession of the idea, like I'm going to swim to the moon. Like it's not actually possible. And so in a weird way, it's an easy thing to say, like I'm going to do, like it was sort of fun. And then suddenly somebody called BS.
At mile 1 where you're like, oh my God.
What was I thinking? And many times, every single day, I think I thought sometimes, what was I thinking? But the project was basically to try to run from one end of the Sahara Desert. Senegal was right on the Atlantic Ocean. There's a little spit of the Sahara, more the Sahel, which is the Sahel sounds like a fun word, but it's actually the transitional space between between like regular terrain and desert. So it's desertification is happening over a long period of time, and so it's this scrub land. So that's where we started. Then all the way across Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Libya, and Egypt. And I'll tell you the truth, from the very beginning, the thing I was most interested in was not the running, but the culture. And like I was going to run across, 6 Muslim countries, and I found it to be just infinitely interesting. And but partly too, because I'd gone on a scouting trip a year before and I met people and I accidentally, like I didn't even know it was Ramadan, but I ended up in Cairo for like almost all of Ramadan one year.
But you're running 2 marathons a day. How does one even have the ability to enjoy the non-running time?
Yeah.
Like
it was hard. It was hard. But when if you get a chance to see the film, like you'll see, we ran through Timbuktu one day in Mali. And Timbuktu is one of the most ancient cities on the planet that still is a city today. And the music in Mali is very famous. And so like we're all exhausted, but we're laying around a campfire with, indigenous people, and they're playing music and we're eating food and laughing. And, and then we got to go to our tent and get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and run 50 miles again. The next day. And there was a rhythm to it.
There had to be a point where you would wake up in the morning. I mean, when I wake up in the morning and I'm about to run 4 miles, I'm like, some mornings I'm just like, I don't have this in me. How do you get through that?
Yeah, very often my eyes would open at 4 a.m. and the first thought in my head was, oh no. Like literally, oh no. Because it never felt like I probably averaged about 5 hours of sleep per night for this event also. Like even though we're running probably 12 hours a day, but sleep was hard to come by. It was difficult. And so I think that compartmentalization really is critical. And I was probably the most prepared person ever for this because of my sobriety background. The one day at a time mantra, as you heard in the story, I sort of wasn't thinking about that because I felt so much pressure to be successful on this big expedition. Matt Damon was my partner, right? And he wasn't running. I remind him of that regularly. By the way, I had my first run with him right here in this city in New York.
That's awesome.
Back when we were deciding if we wanted to do this project together. And actually, it's a good story. So I met Matt. We ran 10 miles. And it was funny because Matt's wearing a ball cap and like people would figure out it was him, but not until we were about 50 feet passed, and so they would
What was his pace?
Yell his name. So we were running probably running an 8:30 pace.
Nice.
So a healthy pace while having a conversation. And he's a good athlete. But we finished 10 miles, and he actually says, I don't understand. I don't get it. Like that is it. That's the farthest I could go.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't see how you do it. And out of nowhere, he quoted me so many times through the years. It's the only reason I remember what I said to him. I just said, Matt, the thing is, you're just going to have to change your relationship to pain. And like, he really took that to heart. And I actually meant it.
Yeah.
Because again, what happens at any point with a runner, let's just deal with running. It's fear. It's fear. Like, we hit this point and we can feel that lactic acid building up in our muscles.
Every morning.
Right. And so the way to get through it is to just simply focus on, I know it sounds simple, but the miles that are right in front of you. Because if you do analyze it, all of us go immediately, even your 4-mile run. If you feel like crap at a mile, you're actually looking at your watch.
Yeah.
And thinking to yourself, I've got 3 more miles of this. Like, whatever pace you're going, this sucks. I don't want to do this. Like, all of that. And it's very counterproductive, because how many times have you quit your 4-mile run?
In the last 3-4 years, I actually haven't.
None. Exactly. That's my point. So you're not going to quit.
Yeah. Definitely have wanted to.
Well,
most days.
Right. But actually, and so that's a good thing. So what you have actually done is problem solve an amazing, simple little problem. And I know I articulated this some earlier.
Yeah.
Do you think you're stronger on a daily basis in your regular dealings in both business and with people because you do that 4-mile run?
Absolutely. It's the only way I get through. I can't come to work without it, because it's my therapy, and it kind of it gives me the energy to come and do anything.
And it's discipline.
Yeah.
It is the relief. And I remind people too, there's no rules. You could walk that 4 miles in the morning and you would get pretty much the exact same benefit. People, if they want stress relief, and they want to think better, and they want to, I've never made a big decision in the last 33 years that wasn't decided on a run, ever.
Yeah.
I don't mean I didn't like sit here with you and make a decision, but if it's a big one, I'll say yes, but give me a day or two. And I will literally go for a 10-mile run with no music and no nothing. And like I said earlier, I'll let all the marbles in my head settle down, and I'll see what's in my heart. Because I actually can't like get here most of the time without like physical movement to help me. I always look at, I envision it even as like reaching my hands into this scuzzy pond, and like I need to clear all this stuff away so I can reach down and actually grab a clean drink of water.
Yeah. I've had many conversations between your talk this morning and now. I will tell you one thing. I did talk to my wife, and she'll be mad that I'm bringing this up on the podcast. But I think this lesson here of kind of not looking, 60 miles down the path and actually just doing 1 mile at a time. I mean, it's a great lesson of life. I mean, like, I think oftentimes we look, to 3 years or 5 years, or how am I going to do that, or what's going to happen in 5 years from now, what's going to happen, when the truth is, like, if we take a breath and wait until the next morning, we will figure it out. And I think I love your analogy of the marbles kind of falling in place. A lot of times, I think a lot of us have the marbles kind of moving at 100 miles per hour, and oftentimes it's just needs to all settle in.
Well, and I feel badly for people who don't run or walk. Unless you can't walk for some reason, then you should walk.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be running. People, you don't have to run, but there should be something, and it should be in nature as much as possible. Not everyone can do that, treadmills are fine or whatever, but having actual, wind in your face and birds singing in the trees and all of that. I mean, on a day like today,
not to advertise someone else's book, but I did, you brought up Michael Easter's Comfort Crisis, the Muskogee Challenge. I mean, I think like
totally.
I handed that book also out to a number of people, including my son. And just, I think embracing kind of discomfort is the greatest way to
I'm so
grow.
jealous. I'm a little pissed off even. Like, and I mean this, like, you read my book and you read his. Could I have written his book?
I think they're both phenomenal.
Well, no, I mean, no, my joke is though that like he did a great job. I mean, I love him, and but I jokingly say like that's a concept that I believe so much in, is the pursuit of comfort is such a waste of time. I'm not saying you can't have a nice car and a good house and like whatever, but like for that to be an actual pursuit is just not, there's nothing gained from that. You know, we can have nice stuff, but also pursue hardship, self-imposed hardship in a way that allows us to grow, because that's the only way we grow.
Yeah. So I will say this: the first time I heard your story at a very high level of kind of addiction to runner, I thought I knew the archetypal story, but your story doesn't really follow the normal arc. It wasn't man is addicted, goes to prison, becomes like finds a passion and finds a runner. You battled addiction, became a runner, and then went to prison completely sober. I'd love to just understand how you think about kind of the arc of your story, and then understand, obviously, if you give you a chance to kind of explain the story of prison, because it is completely as unbelievable as your running adventures are. The story is equally as unbelievable, and we talked earlier about being one of one. I mean, like, it seems almost unbelievable how you landed there.
Yeah, I either have the worst luck or the best luck, and it really, I guess, does depend on how you frame. How I really, nobody else, how I frame the answer, and I wouldn't have asked for that time in prison, voluntarily, but and I'm not just like putting lipstick on a pig. Like, I mean, I really am in some ways truly grateful for the reset that it gave me. So you want me to talk about how it came about?
Yeah, please.
I'll try to keep it brief. But in short, the joke that I tell is that I had, after the Sahara and Running America, which was the next project where I tried to run across the United States, made another film. After those two things, I had just enough notoriety to be interesting, like to media or whatever, but I didn't have, when it came to law enforcement, I didn't have nearly enough money to defend myself. This was a particular time. So in 2009, we all know we're kind of at the tail end and hung over from the financial crisis that took place for so many years. And I had a single loan, just a little bridge loan in 2005. And it was a ninja loan even. Like, I had a great credit score, and like it was just this small little thing. But ultimately, and I know I'm skipping a couple steps, but ultimately I end up being the only person in the U.S. at that time to be charged as a borrower with overstating my income on a home loan application, on a no-doc home loan application. So I wasn't even required to turn in any documents, like other than whatever, signing stuff. And I guess the cautionary part of this, in a way, is that there's a single IRS agent who I wrote about in the book. And to tell you the truth, I only told half the story in the book. And because some other parts of it are so unbelievable that people would have the old, is it Shakespeare? Methinks he doth protest too much. Like, if I told kind of all the nuts and bolts of it, people would be like, you're making this up. Like, you're making this up. Like, this can't actually happen. But it did. And by the way, I'll even start with a nugget I left out earlier. This was a loan with Countrywide. Okay? Was Countrywide a bank? It wasn't a bank. It was what they even called a pretender lender without FDIC insurance. So the weirdness here is that today the case would never be brought because, without FDIC insurance, the feds, the federal government, don't even have like jurisdiction to say. You could say on a loan application, I make $10 million a month, and it's up to Countrywide to actually figure out whether you qualify for that loan, not the bank. Anyway, what happens is I get basically charged with overstating my income on a home application, and for that I could get 20 years in federal prison, I'm told. And this came at
And this agent found you because of your films.
Yeah, he went to see the films in Greensboro, North Carolina, and and basically just made me a target and did sneaky, creepy things like use the Patriot Act, which was like, or in the original charging documents, they actually charged me with money laundering And which is a weird thing that I keep saying, adding new things, but like the Patriot Act was for terrorism and things like that. But if you use that term, you could dig into people's financials and surveil their computers and phones and
undercover agents,
and send in undercover. They could do all those things, and then magically before I got to trial, that charge got dropped because it was never a real thing. Like there was never actually a thing there, but they got the ability to just add it on and then drop it later. But ultimately, I end up fighting, these charges because I knew I hadn't actually done that. I had not overstated my income purposely on a home loan application. And as it turns out at trial, a mortgage broker that I used admitted, not just of me, but like 20 other people, he admitted to forging loan applications in their names, even his own parents. He signed his own parents' name to a loan application. Yeah. Like this was a guy delivering pizzas, and no kidding, 6 months before he's working at this brokerage. It was just a big mess. But I end up being found guilty of what amounts to mail fraud because I signed a closing package that included this falsified document, and it did not matter if I knew it was in there or not, or if I had anything to do with it. I owned it once I signed for it. And I got sentenced to 21 months in federal prison in Beckley, West Virginia.
Yeah.
I don't want to pick on West Virginia, but like it was kind of like insult to injury, and like, and I said in my talk earlier,
I think Southern California prison probably wouldn't be that
probably
much
wouldn't be
better.
great either. No, I mean, in theory, you're supposed to get an opportunity to be in a place where you have access to your family. There were many prisons they could have sent me to, but honestly, they were mad at me. Yeah. I mean, because nobody goes to trial against the feds. Yeah. You're going to lose, and I lost. So, I mean, they proved their point, but they double, triple, quadruple down if you dare stand up and say, I want a trial. Yeah. Which is, nobody does that. My guideline sentence, you would have no reason to know this, but my guideline sentence was about 4.5 years. Based on the perceived loss, and I didn't have a criminal record like at all. I'd had one DUI way back when, but the judge actually gave me a 21-month sentence called a downward departure, which is very unusual. Yeah, I mean, because almost no judge, you pretty much are going to be on the guidelines, and it was because he very clearly knew that this was a little heavy-handed. Yeah. So.
Unbelievable story. I recommend everyone read it. I mean, I think for me, so many parts of the book, from childhood to the adventures in the Sahara to the prison story, is you can't make it up.
Well, and good things. I mean, we don't have to go into detail, but you read the book. Good things came out of prison. Yeah. I mean, really, they did. I don't recommend it as a career path. But the fact is, good things did come out of it. And back to my mom for the very beginning of this. I wondered, like, why is my mom, hanging out with these people, or whatever that means. And the fact is, these people are us the vast majority of the time. Yeah. One little twist of circumstance, or you took a left instead of a right. It's just a good reminder that you don't know what the next thing is going to be. And if you could approach everything with the same attitude of kind of curiosity, you're going to be fine.
I love it. Let's fast forward to the future.
Okay.
You're preparing for quite an adventure from the Dead Sea to Mount Everest. I'd love for you to talk.
Yeah, a literal spin on my lows and highs. Yeah. Basically, to go from the lowest place on the planet, which is the Dead Sea, as most people know, human-powered, all the way to the top of Everest. And it will involve diving, cycling, running, sailing, obviously climbing on Mount Everest, and probably a few other things, mountain biking in some sections and road biking in others, and a pretty strong ticking clock because I'll start at the beginning of 2027. But as most people know, we all see it every year. In mid-May, there's this window of time when people climb Everest, when there's the summit window. So I have to be to Everest essentially by April 1st. Yep. So I need to cover about 4,000 miles in 90 days. And, it's a long way to go doing what I'm doing and accounting for all the things that could or might go wrong. And the why.
Yeah.
When I did the Sahara, people ask why all the time, and I gave answers. I gave answers. Some of them were around self-discovery. Some were, water, because that was my cause, if you will. And with this one, I've actually come to say, ask me afterwards. Because I would love to tell you that and I think that's the thing. We tell ourselves stories constantly, and that's kind of how we survive in a way. Like we have our own internal, constantly running narrative of the whys in our life. Why am I doing this and that? And how am I building this all together? And the Sahara taught me that I got from point A to point Z. Like I made it all the way across the Sahara, but the journey was nothing like what I thought it was going to be. Nothing. And the lessons that I learned didn't even come close to resembling what I thought I might get out of it, both good and bad. And so I'm trying to even set myself up for this big adventure, and just to realize that this is going to be, it's going to be another journey of self-discovery for sure. But I don't know. I mean, last time I did something big like that in Sarah, I went to prison. So let's see what happens. Maybe I'll go to the moon this time or something. So hopefully something better
Mars.
than prison.
Yeah, unbelievable. So I will say I did the audiobook, which I recommend, by the way, to everyone. If you're a runner, listening to it while you're running is a fantastic experience. But at the very end of your book, I had to rewind it and listen to it probably 5 times because I had to capture this quote. And I won't, read it out for everybody, but you talk about the importance of adaptation. And I wanted to kind of close with, your thoughts around the importance of adapting. I'd love to just hear your thoughts.
Thank
on
you.
this. Yeah.
That's a great way to end, because again, I think that I don't want to be presumptive with the audience that would be listening to this, but you got a lot of talented people who are frankly trying to plan for the future. If I understand the way this business works, right? So and
prepare for an uncertain future.
Well, an uncertain future. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, interestingly, this group is probably even best qualified to understand exactly what I mean. However, there's a little difference. That is, I do things that the fear, if you will, is inherently built in. I mean, there is fear, physical fear. Most of my fear is around other human beings, these big adventures. Nature is nature. Nature isn't personally attacking me. So I might die in an avalanche, or I might, get lost in an ocean or whatever. Hopefully I don't die, but you know what I mean? Those things might happen. I wouldn't take that personally, because it's not someone coming after me. It's just the nature of it. So I accept those risks as just inherent to the thing. Nature, though, allows me the endless opportunity to adapt to the changing circumstances. And I am so excited about the hardship that's coming. What's the point of the exercise if you're not going to allow yourself to kind of do a deep dive into some pain, some physical pain that brings about emotional growth and pain? So to avoid it is impossible anyway. So I want to be able to do this thing in a way that allows me to tap into that pain, but also have that, that personal growth along the way, and not know what the answers are. If everybody, I rarely talk about this philosophy, but I want to end with this. I think we spend our lives in a way chasing firsts. Okay. And just to expand on that, when I first got sober, my biggest worry was that my life was going to be incredibly boring. It really was, because I didn't know I loved it, but I thrived on the danger of driving through a hard neighborhood and making my way through. And those 10 years of addiction, I cleaned up from time to time, and I ran during those times too, because I understood kind of the need for to fulfill that part of me.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, think about it. First jobs, first love, first car, those emotions that come with those parts of our lives, we then spend time trying to recreate them. So a first marathon, you step up to the line And you're a liar if you say part of you isn't terrified that first time. You're excited, you're terrified, you're all of that. And so you go through these 26.2 miles not knowing how this is going to feel at all. After my first few marathons, I never feared for finishing, but I feared for how much I was willing to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
But the newness was gone. Like I no longer had that.
Was Badwater the second time? Like,
Badwater was unique for me only because, and I ran it 7 times. One time I did not finish, is a better way to put it. But the other 6 times I actually got faster each time.
Wow.
And so there was a learning curve. So I could kind of claim that each one was new, in that I kept figuring out new ways to go another hour, faster. But this sort of fear of taking on things that you don't know or understand how to do it's the elixir of life, certainly for me. And I think most people, if you admit it, like that's what turns us on. And I think even in the investment world, right, there's something, you want to take the safe, proven path because that's what your clients, demand, and there's a certain return you're going to get. But we all look at the thing over here. I don't care who you are. And you're like going, man, it sure would be nice one time to go for that thing, whatever it is. And like, it probably needs to be your money if you're doing that. But, but that's how I look at it. I think I also just want to be in the moment. I know I've said this 3 times now, but like when I finished this air, I got a call from NPR. So I was interviewed like immediately after, 30 minutes later. And the softball question was, how does it feel? Like you just finished this thing. And without any planning or anything else, I actually said, this might be the saddest day of my life.
It's unbelievable, by the way. So there are many athletes, like when they win the Super Bowl, after that, they're like, well, what's left to accomplish? Like they almost get this well,
the thing it's cliche, but it is the journey, not the destination, because I had spent 2 years of my life planning, preparing, doing logistics, training, suffering, begging, all the things that go into planning. Because an expedition is just a business. You write a business plan and you try to execute on it. Same thing. And so now I'm at the end of it. I'm having my exit, right? I've got my exit. And all of a sudden it's like, I could turn around and go back the other direction and it would not replicate anywhere close to the same feelings I had coming this way.
Yeah.
If there is a lesson in these long distance adventures, it's the reminder to be as present as possible. We all talk about presence, but be there now, or be here now, I guess is a better way to put it, which I think is a book too. But be in this moment.
That's awesome. Well, Charlie, thank you very much for your time. This is an incredible honor for me. And I'm looking forward to January 2027 of following your run.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to be following me.
I'm going to be in it.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. As a reminder, all investing involves risk. Principal loss is possible. This podcast is not investment advice, and the opinions expressed here do not represent a formal or official view of Stone Ridge.